Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and Ashley Buckholt dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to The Lumber Word. For the date we are recording this is the 31st, January 31st, 2024. We had some great feedback on our guests and our shows from the last few weeks, so we're going to keep it rolling. Matt Beamer from Hampton Lumber Sales is here. Gregg Riley, Sitka, USA. We will introduce our guests in a few minutes. Wanted to go through a little bit of the market update since last week. It seems like we've had a little pullback on some items. Some items seem strong. I know, Gregg, you and I were talking this morning, seemed the eastern spruce market. If somebody's got worms in their wood, it's selling a little bit cheaper than somebody that doesn't have worms in their wood. So we're kind of getting a two-tier market on certain items like 2x4 16s, MSR, certain studs out of the different, one of the guys told me this morning out of the Abitibi type of region. Does that make sense? Gregg, Matt, have you heard that at all?
Yeah, we've certainly heard. We've got some feedback from people in the marketplace that are asking, "Hey, do you have an issue with wormholes?" I followed up with our mills at LeMay and Saint Michel, and neither of them are processing any of the burn kill timber, so they're saying that they don't have an issue. But there is an ongoing issue with some folks that are not happy getting wormholes in their lumber. Although it's all on grade, there's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't look nice.
Yeah, this is where it's a product of Mother Nature, and when there's catastrophic events, we need to clear the timber, and this is part of the situation. But again, all of it's on grade from what we could see. So eastern spruce, we'll talk a little about it in our Merry Date Breakup segment. It seems that nines had a little bit of a bite last week. They're still trading. They haven't caught their wind yet. Studs are still trading. Western spruce looks like it printed around 546 Chicago or 438 mil, which with the CME, if I'm talking here, is it still around the 560 mark, Gregg?
Last is 560, yes.
So still a premium to cash. So any thoughts there on the future side, Matt or Gregg, where we're at, where we're adjusting to right now? Anything to read into this?
It's kind of in the middle. So if you look at 590 as a high and 520, 530 kind of as the gap, the low point, we're just smack dab in the middle. If you look at the stats of it too, like the RSI, there's stochastics, any of that stuff, that's also right in the middle. So I guess 560 is sort of your benchmark midpoint right now.
The market gap lower today. There's a gap below, a gap above. I mean, it can move $10 to $20 either way and mean nothing at all.
Matt, while you were chatting there, what is your sense of the market, Ben? What's your feedback since we did the show last Wednesday?
I'm not as busy as I have been. Yesterday I was really busy. Today I'm not very busy at all. Monday I wasn't all that busy. By my standards, I would say that I'm slower on average this week than I was last week, and last week was slower than the previous 2 weeks. Overall, it's not a bad month. I looked at my stats for January, and it's up from last year in terms of volume and margin.
Yeah.
I guess I can't complain really in the big picture, and that just goes along with my overall general theory that I'm a bull. I'm not a bear in the long run here over the first several months of the year, but I'm not a raging bull either. Like I have tempered optimism here. I feel like we have a cap on the top and a cap on the bottom, and that's how I'm trading.
I'll tell you how the market feels to me, and it's from an experience I had today about an hour ago. Gregg will laugh about this. Probably, had a guy calling wanting to buy some euro from us on the port in Houston, and since I had not sold anything in a couple of days, I wanted to just basically sell something. And Gregg's like, hold your number here. This is the market feels better than it is. And I was a little upset, left, Guy calls me back in my truck and buys it all from me.
Let's get straight to that. Ash, you were like a little bitch. Come on. I mean, you were a little bitchy, and like I went, you know what? Hey, man up, man.
I need an order.
That's well, we all see these movies different in our head, so I would say that is probably how I was. But the point being is the market. I've been letting the market every day kind of dictate where my head is. The market overall, when I look at every week we've finished up here, it feels a little bit better to me.
Matt, it's interesting with what you said. And it may be just the yin and yang of things, but I was looking down as Ash and I, we've sold more lumber already this week than we sold either of the last 2 weeks, and it's only midday. It's only midday Wednesday,
and it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like. I was
really busy 2 weeks ago when you guys were sitting there, doing nothing. So it is the yin and yang of things. You're having your turn in the box, and I'm sitting back waiting for my turn next, right?
So one of the markets that everybody keeps asking us about that we're involved. We have a great guest here today, Thomas Mende, President and CEO of Binderholz Timber. But the great thing, Thomas is not only heavily involved, and I'll let him explain about the mills in Europe that they have on the European lumber side, but he also has a strong familiarity with not only building Southern pine mills, but now basically managing them and having the sales for them. So, and also Thomas is a good friend. We've known each other since my block lumber days, and
way back.
I was going to say my coke days, but that sounds like a bad drug comment. But like I will say this: not only is Thomas very well known in the industry, every single place I've been to, he supported me at. So it's great to have him on the show. Thomas, thanks for coming on. If you could tell us a little bit about Binderholz, what you do, and then we'll jump in to ask you some questions.
Yeah, you're welcome, Ashley. Thanks for having me on this show and letting me share my opinions about this market and what's going on in general. Binderholz is a family-owned company out of Austria. It's now questionable. We think we're number 5 in the world in terms of lumber output, but that's because of mills in Austria, Germany, Finland, Latvia, UK, and 2 pine mills here in the US. A lot of what we do is, of course, selling lumber, but the company is also heavily involved and a market leader in glulam beams. We run the largest glulam beam factory in the world, located in Austria. We have 2 large CLT, cross-laminated timber factories, one in Austria, one in Germany. And we make a product that we're introducing this year in the US we call it now decorative micro CLT. It's a solid wood panel that's basically has the same setup as a CLT. It's just thinner, and it's designed for the interior application, furniture, for millwork, paneling, flooring, whatever you might want to use it for. So in the Binderholz Timber side, which is the company here in Atlanta, we import lumber from the European sawmills. We've done that since about 2019, the end of 2019. We got started with that officially through this office. Then we also, as you mentioned, have the pleasure of selling Southern Yellow Pine from the 2 pine sawmills. And if you're not in the Southern Pine business, it's probably the most volatile lumber business there is. So it's a real fun and joy every day to be in that business.
Yeah, great feedback, Thomas. So how is selling European lumber different from pine? What are the big glaring differences between?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's actually quite simple. I think that's true for spruce in general. If you're a spruce buyer, you kind of work with lead times that have to do with transportation, with rail car lead times, and in this case, it's an import lead time, and of course then a production lead time. But I think the big challenge, of course, is compared to the rail car sales of a Western Canadian or Western US producer, we have the challenge that our boats usually carry a significant large amount of lumber at one shot that arrives and it's there and this makes a big plop and there it is. So that's of course a very unique sort of challenge. It doesn't trickle in like a rail car or truck would, but it just plops and there it is. So that leads a little bit to market volatilities. But on the pine side, it's just worse. You can be 50 over in the morning and 150 under in the afternoon. And I always say that's, at least my explanation for that is pine you can order today and get tomorrow if it's in stock. It's a very, very quick moving item. And then because so much of it ends up in the treated business, you always have these large purchasing cycles of the treating plants to build up their inventory during certain times of the year. So they affect that business, just as dramatically as anything else. In the old days, I don't know what the number is today, but in the old days, it was 50% of all production. So that would be 60, 70% of number two and better production that would go into the treating cylinder eventually. With that much volume going into one particular market segment, there's just tremendous volatility built in.
Yeah, we were talking on last week's show about pine. Was it last week, Gregg and Matt, about whether treaters had even stepped in and bought yet? And as of a week ago, they really hadn't even stepped in and bought for the spring. Is that still true right now, or they started to step in, Thomas, and buy?
Do you contract for much of your production, Thomas?
Yeah,
pine?
so this year was our first year that we actually entered into contracts with the pine production, and really just for the matter that we now have quite consistent production in those two mills.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, then we had at least in the south, we had heavy rains, so that kind of hurt log supply tremendously. And that's still to be seen in terms of where the market really is in terms of treated half treater spot. I would imagine that based on the last few weeks of this year, I mean, this is the first beautiful blue day, since the beginning of January. So, the market was certainly weak. I think the sales in the home centers were quite weak on treated lumber. So I don't think there was a big need for the treaters to step in. But I think that will change in the next couple of weeks, so there'll be a significant difference there.
Thomas, one of the things that we're always kind of putting our finger in the air is volumes of European lumber coming to the US. We get reports back from Europe that domestic markets are better and that their producers are looking at those returns. Log prices are up. I guess I'd say from your vantage point, which is substantial, what do you see over the next 60, 90, 120 days in terms of the volume of European lumber coming to ports, both globally and from a Binderholz perspective?
Yeah, I can of course only speak really of the Binderholz perspective, but I can make some assumption about other producers. I would say in general, the market has tremendously shifted. Europeans, when you look at the European arrivals, it was tracking for a record year in 2023, and then it suddenly collapsed, and it was not a record year for European lumber imports, and it significantly throttled back. From our perspective, we went down at least 50% on our volume. What happened last year, everybody in Europe at the end of 2022, it was miserable to be in Europe, to be a European lumber producer. And the US was the only sort of place in the world that looked like it was going to move lumber in 2023, and everybody basically overshipped. And despite all these huge inventories on the ground, the market actually still moved up. So I think that was quite a surprise for everybody, but of course it necessarily didn't absorb all the volume. But the inventories are much, much lower. And then towards the end of the year, the inventory coming in, the new inventory coming in was significantly reduced. So today we're looking at, inventory levels that are so much lower than what they used to be or what they were last year. And at least we're all hoping for higher demand in the US. So that should actually bode quite well for the spring market.
Thomas, I'm curious, do you make that decision, or does the home office make that decision as to how much lumber to send for Binderholz over to the United States? And how far ahead do you have to make that decision?
Yeah, so the thing is, now is the end of January, but we already know what will come through April, so we already know what's happening February, March, and April. And at least from our perspective, open market wood will be, open market wood, not overall volume, but what we call open market for sale. It's down to 10% of what it used to be. What we did is we went into more programs and we picked up some more program volume. And that is the difference between what I said earlier and the 10% open market. So that's our strategy. I think other mills might be different, but Greg, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the issue is there's higher prices for logs in Europe, probably at this point starting to reach record high levels. We have higher production costs now, because of negotiated tariff rates for all workers. That's kind of like the European way of raising based on inflation. And you have also the fact that you produce less because you cut back shifts. All over Europe, at least there's a shift and a half or 2 shifts down. So there's less production, which increases your cost. There's higher cost from the workers and there's higher log costs. So the break-even level, or to make this U.S. business attractive, has completely changed, within a fairly short period of time.
We're thinking that number it's north of $600 FOB
Absolutely
U.S.
right.
port.
You're exactly right, Craig. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would think so too. So and now you have the following, because of the low production, even though let's say the German business is quite slow, there's other markets that are moving quite well. I mean, prices in the Middle East, prices in India, prices in North Africa have significantly accelerated. Pallet, PALLET prices, so sideboard prices are higher now than surface dimension lumber in the US. So all that would indicate to me that for the industry, more lumber will stay in Europe and then not come to the US.
So if I heard you right, last year you were probably the largest or one of the largest European importers of lumber, and you were predominantly all open market with that. Your volumes are down significantly, and with contract wood now you're saying you have 10% of the volume that you had is now on the open market. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So what's the theory to selling the open market wood, Thomas, or how does Binderholz sell the open market wood? You have a series of salespeople. Are you doing it off of a list? What's your go-to-market strategy on that 10% of the open market wood that you have?
Of course, the big clue is we want to sell as high as possible. So
Sure.
We have now we're a team of 7 sales guys here in the office that sell Euro spruce. And of course, we try to figure out a way of how to capture the highest number. But the main strategy at this point is product mix. So, one big part of last year's less than stellar performance was the product mix that was brought in. So now it's much, much tighter. It's much more, let's say, reflective of the actual market demand. And that will help tremendously.
So what you're saying is that you've tightened up what you're not bringing up smorgasbord, you're bringing more of a targeted.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, do you, I know you're large glue lamb producer and CLT. Are those products coming to the U.S. market now?
Yeah, so CLT, we're very active in the U.S. market. These are mostly the large building projects. Right now, if you live near Baltimore, the Under Armour headquarters being constructed. All out of timber. I think there's only 2 big pieces of steel in the entire building. It's a fantastic
really cool
project to go by. It's definitely something to see. And, there's a number of these projects that we're actively engaging. In those projects, we sell the glue lamb. In those projects, we sell these micro CLT panels. That's quite normal. The glue lamb side itself is getting certified right now as we speak. We should have ANSI 190, I think, is the specification certification by the middle of the year. And then you will be able to hopefully attack the the U.S. market on the glulam side as well.
Now, does that product come on a project by project basis? So so it's basically you're going to sell the project. It's going to ship in 6, 9, 12 months, and you take the order. It's on a per order basis, custom order basis.
It can be both. So, I mean, it's a question of what customers really want. So we can, of course, provide stock glulam for the distribution channels or for large end users. But we also have the perfect, beautiful facility, fully automated robotics that can make stock lists basically on 1 item of this, 2 items of that, 3 items of that. They all come out at the end of the facility and put together little projects. Yeah.
We have a large listener base of multifamily users now. In order to get that product, should they just call Sitka USA, or are there a number of distributors that they could go through, or do you sell direct?
So at this point, we don't have a channel lined up of how we sell that. So obviously, first comes, first serve. So first early bird gets the worm. So feel free to contact myself, or we will be selling some through distributor. It's kind of like the lumber business, in a way. You have to kind of use all channels to get to.
I didn't mean to cut Matt out. Of course, they can call Hampton Lumber Sales
Absolutely.
also.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No offense taken, buddy.
Hey, so I just listened to what everybody's saying here, and we saw that West Fraser curtailment that a week ago or 2 weeks ago now, and we see less Western spruce coming over. I touched on the fact that MSR in the East is now a lot less expensive than MSR in the West. And there's a lot less premium lumber coming out of the West with curtailments or actual closures. Thomas, when I hear you say less European lumber coming over, people that are looking for a high quality stick of lumber, it seems to me that premium is going to get wider. And I'm not just sitting here trying to pump prices up. I'm just looking at the economics of everything, right?
Thomas is never going to feel bad if you pump prices, Ashley. He loves that.
Well, I'm looking at the economics of the production here.
No, it's just, as my boss likes to say, 1 + 1 is 2. I mean, it's just, you have to.
Just math.
It may not be 2 right now, but it'll be 2 eventually. And I think that's the big question. And look, when you talk about wormwood, what are you talking about? You're talking about somebody that's not out of the goodness of their heart is cutting lower grade logs. It's somebody whose margins are below profitability, and they're looking to find a way to make money. And the way to make money is to buy insect beetle damaged firewood, that's cheaper, so you can make a margin. So we have to really look at what are break-even levels, not just for Europeans, but what are break-even levels for Eastern Canadians, Western Canadians, Western lumber mills. Where is everybody? And we all got to realize there's only so long that those levels, the price levels, can sustain to be below break-even levels. And it's just not. There's no other way for the market to move.
Real quick, Thomas, one of the things that you just touched on that we all know about because we all work for mills. Gregg's got sales agreements with sawmills. I work for Hampton. We own 10 sawmills. You've got your 5th largest producer in the world with your sawmills. And we've talked about this for 2 years now. The cost of making lumber doesn't go down. It hasn't gone down in 2 years. It's gone up a lot. It costs more to transport it. It costs more to hire people. It costs more to train people. It costs more to retain those people. The benefits packages and the hourly wages you're paying your production workers now are much higher than they were 4 years ago. Everything costs more to make, including the raw material. So this idea that we have to stay at $400 for the rest of our careers for a commodity, it's just a crock of crap. I mean, it's not even founded in reality. It's wishful thinking is what it is.
Fantasy. Yeah.
Yep.
Mary Day Tompash?
Yes. Well, I appreciate that, Thomas. We were going to jump into the segment that we do every week, Marry, Date, or Dump, where we talk about the item or items that we are in love with, the ones that we're just infatuated with, and the ones that we've fallen out of favor with.
And we're looking forward to hearing what yours are going to be.
Well, Greg,
Okay, so you want me to participate? Okay,
Greg,
good.
you need to, and we'll let Thomas go last so we can think about this. But
Yeah.
Greg, you got to defend your position this week. I mean, last week I remember you wanted to marry 2x4 9s. We tied the strings and the cans to the car leaving the church, and I mean, I kind of saw it on the side of the road a little bit ago. You were working on it. Are we still good there? Where are you at on this whole thing?
Well, and I had this conversation with someone today about basis trading. I mean, 2x4 9-foot studs are a great basis trade. One of the things sometimes about basis trades is, they're great and then they get even better and then they get even better. And I'm going to stay hooked to 2x4 9-foot studs, but I will say that the relationship is getting off to a very rocky start. I think this is going to be a slow burn on this relationship to get it going. And I guess my big question mark is the thing that's going to really drive 2x4 9-foot is going to be a uptick in multifamily jobs, covering multifamily jobs. And until we get that, I think we're going to be laying on the side. I'm still dating 2x4 16s, great liquidity. I will say that their relative strength has fallen. And I mean, the thing I'd like to date is 2x6 16s, sub 500 FOB the ports, but that's getting hard. That babe is getting hard to find. I'm still not dumping anything here. I'm buy. I like the market. We're in seasonal strength. Lumber is undervalued. It's going to move higher between now and second quarter. Is it sooner or later? I don't know, but it's going to happen.
Matt?
You remember a couple 3 weeks ago, I just said I wanted to marry just premium lumber in general.
Yep.
And what Thomas just said is kind of a added confirmation of that idea. But my idea was more based on time of year than the volume of European lumber that's not coming in. But either way, all of it is a good reason to stay interested in premium lumber. That being said, that's not my marry this week. I'm going to marry 2x10 anything. Mills aren't making it, period. So when mills stop making it, you want to go find some and sit on it for a little while. But I can't get quotes on 2x10, at least in the U.S. I'm sure if I trolled around in Canada, I probably could. But a lot of the Canadian spruce doesn't span as much as the hem fir and the Doug fir. So a guy in Missouri might not even want to quote on spruce. So like the spruce 2x10 is sort of a niche. And then as far as dating goes, I'm what did I say for dating this week? I think 2x4 16s is kind of a date thing. I mean, they're relatively strong. 18s and 20s are also relatively strong, but they're carrying a large premium, so you have to be cognizant of that. And then as far as the dump part of it, I just dump an MSR. MSR is just such a big premium, and it's just not going to last. It's already fading. There's mills that'll take $30 and $40 off to get an order on some 1650 or 2100 right now. I'm not really interested in that at the moment.
Yeah, the buy on that is when you're buying it at 2 and better prices, right, Matt?
As we all know, close your eyes and buy a lot.
Yeah, so I agree with you on the MSR. I'm between the dump and wanting to date phase, trying to bid on some of it at the 2 and better prices, but I think I'm the only one showing up at the grade school dance for that right now. There's no willing players to do that. Although I did see 16s start to loosen up a little bit. Married 2x4 16s, I mean, they are volatile, and I really like that. So I'm going to keep dating 2x4 16s. Those swing like all over when you want to move something, then somebody comes in and pays a higher price for one or two of them. And as far as being married, I don't trade pine, but if I was going to marry something, it'd probably be the wides and pine, just because when I look at them, especially the higher grades, and what Matt, you just talked about, once we have treater step in or anything, those premiums I'm guessing, and this is just my own guess, I could be wrong, could jump $100, as Thomas says, in a day when somebody wants to buy a whole bunch of 2x10. And we've shipped it all the way up into, like I said, way up into the upper Midwest, because some other astute people are starting to see that trade happen. So those are kind of the ones that we're looking for. So Thomas, how about, this is your first time in, so we're not going to hold you to anything, but we want to get your feedback. What do you think?
I normally know this game from Watch What Happens Live and on Bravo, so but they actually get to.
That's where we got it from. My wife was listening to Bravo, and I'm like, I gotta try it.
He must have daughters.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually like it. That's the funny thing. Yeah, I admit
Never
it.
admit that publicly, Thomas.
No. No, I think all of what you say makes a lot of sense to me. I'd say the 2x4 is the big question to me when you look at last year's performance. It kind of peaked early in the season, and then it kind of went down from where it was. And I do think that when you take the Europeans as example, what are they going to make when they see one product being very high priced and other ones they don't, so they'll be making more of that item. So I think 2x4 16s is maybe a date, because the great part is that you use a lot of them. So that's the other side of it, right? But I do think as we go in the next couple of months, I think the studs is what I want to marry, because as much as you think that there's studs out there, seasonal demand always wins on that one. So, and like you said, I think 2x10 16s are going to be disappearing very, very quickly off the market and off the place. 2x12 16s already have an unspruce. So that's, of course, now a very strong item. And,
that's one of the challenges that you have, like you said, with the European is it's like, hey, you see an item that's, a good return, but if it doesn't have the market liquidity, you can kill the market by $200, right?
Yeah, that was always the challenge in Europe since Europe came into the market. What would I want to dump? Anything that I still got in the port that's a little bit older. That's the dump. So if you want a good deal, you're not afraid to go through the pack. Call our office. So
old weathered lumber, dump it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So how do people get a hold of you, Thomas? Just so when they're listening to there, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah. So my email, Thomas with a th.mende at binderholz.com, binderholz.com. And I'll take you to the right person.
Great. Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming on, Thomas. It's, as always, I know I learned a lot listening to this today. I'm feeling a little bit better about things. Gregg and Matt.
Yeah, and Thomas, it's great to have you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. I mean, we've been doing this because we have a fun time doing it, and we feel like we gain some value by having the interaction. And I hope you enjoyed it too, so that we can have you back some other time. I mean, I'm really fascinated to talk more about the CLT and some of that business. I think that's
absolutely.
We didn't even talk about big timber, mass timber, right? We didn't even talk about that, but
any time. So be happy to come back anytime.
I enjoyed it.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Thomas, and everybody. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, and hope you have a great time trading some lumber.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.